but let's bring in Ron MacLean from Hockey Night in Canada. Ron, how are you doing, man? Welcome to the show.
It's good to be here, Darren. And I just saw Rod Black. Did he mention in the last segment that we were together?
No, he didn't. Where were you and Rod?
Friday, we were at the Canadian Blind Hockey Championships, who are held at Mattamy, which is the old Maple Leaf Gardens in Toronto. So it was great to see Rod and reminisced about actually a ton of things, but especially the 87 Canada Cup. Rod was hosting. I was just there as a spectator back in 87, but he's a dear friend. We have a mutual connection. Leanne Harrower was the makeup artist who does Rod for all his stuff at CTV and always worked at Hockey Night in Canada, too. So she was kind of the informant whenever I needed to know what Blackie was up to. Anyway, that was a very special event. The blind hockey, I can't tell you how great it is. And we have 19,000 kids in Canada have visual impairment. One thing's certain, they can be a hockey player because it's just the skill levels off the charts. They had the national team split into kind of an inter-squad to do their final selections off to an international at St. Louis, Missouri. Very inspiring and nice to see Rod.
Very cool. Very cool. Couple of spinoffs on that. One, what's really cool about shows like this and podcasts is we get to learn the personalities of everybody. And, for our viewers, Rod's viewers, Rod Pedersen's viewers, largely a CFL audience coming in, knew Rod Black from his days calling the Canadian Football League on TSN and calling various games, but didn't know Rod Black. When he came on this show, he's got a ton of personality that we didn't really know about, and he's on here wearing a wig. He's got different things going on, quite the character, and that's one of the things that we miss on live TV.
For sure. Well, I remember the 87 Canada Cup, Don Cherry's restaurant downtown Hamilton. So they were playing the last two games were at what was then called the Cops Coliseum. And Rod was the host for CTV, but he was playing bubble hockey with me in the bar, the night before the game. And I got to love this guy. He's got a little red deer in him. But a good friend. And that was an amazing spectacle, of course. That while Rod and I were playing bubble hockey at Don's old bar, Team Soviet Union was over in Brantford at Wayne Gretzky's house at 42 Variety Avenue. They actually invited the KLM line and a bunch of the guys to come and visit at Brantford so they could have a beer. Those guys never got to drink during, the regiment of Soviet hockey system.
Right.
Wayne had them over. I don't know if that helped them eke out a 6-5 victory, but couldn't have hurt.
Yeah, and that's a great story too. Sneaking the Soviets and to have a beer with Wayne and during that was unreal. The other spinoff for that had the chance last winter in Moose Jaw to call the World Sledge Hockey Championships, the play-by-play when it was in Moose Jaw. So you talk about the blind hockey, the sledge hockey. There are so many talented athletes playing the game that just aren't playing it at the National Hockey League level.
Well, Billy Bridges is a pal. His wife, Sammy Jo Small, a goaltender for Team Canada, won a gold medal at the Olympics. Billy, as you know, is a multiple world championships. He was also a great basketball player, wheelchair basketball player, so spinal bifida, but just a world-class athlete with a howitzer of a shot. He and Wendell have the two hardest wrist shots that I know of, and he can wing at 85 miles per hour, one-handed. Just a great hockey player. So, and that's the big goal for the vision impaired, is to get into the parasport Paralympics with their. The problem they have right now is the United States is great at sledge hockey, but they aren't yet up to speed on the blind hockey program that we have. So we need to get other countries, right, to get Paralympic designation. That was curling. So you'll recall, curling used to struggle to be part of the Olympics. When I was at 88 games, it was a demonstration sport, and they finally got in as a demonstration in 92 at Albertville, and that was sort of the ticket or the path to eventually Jennifer Jones repping us first, and Sandra Schmirler, obviously.
Yeah, right. It needs to be something where multiple countries can be competitive. You can't just have the medals handed out before we play. But, you talk about the game, the NHL, and that's kind of what I wanted to get to first with you was I find it interesting. Now, there's the Zach Hyman thing that's going on social media in a negative way, but he's got 51 goals. Matt Rempe has become this cult hero in New York, and we're starting to almost not promote fighting, but it's become kind of a title card, on Saturday night. We're seeing multiple players score 50 goals. Does it feel like a throwback to you? Because it kind of feels like the game is in a throwback era.
Well, in the last 100 years, we had 2 times where there were 100 hat tricks scored in the NHL. And this year, we're at over 102 last I checked, and there was probably a couple in the last 2 days that would up that total. So that's very rare to have that. You had all these third period rallies again last night. Those Nashville Predators, unbelievable. So you're right. We're seeing the offense, but Rempe just appealed to the idea of a Calgary kid who was off the radar a little bit. Takes the biggest stage of them all. Right, when you can go into New York City, I made the mistake. You talk about social media. I was trying to explain to Bobby McMahon that he's got a little cock of the walk in him, and Glenn Sather certainly had that. And he came from Wainwright, same hometown in Alberta. So I thought there's something in the water there. But Rempe did it in New York, and when you do it in New York, the problem is everyone kind of around the scenes has said, John Scott notably, and I know Kevin Bieksa was even inclined to maybe write and send a few notes to Jacob Trouba or somebody to help the kid protect himself if he's going to go heavy into the fighting right away. These are men. Even though he's got the size, these are professional fighters, so you've got to be careful. And you've got to be careful that the New York media doesn't sort of get you caught up in the vortex and you do more than you need to do. So, but he seems to be a great head on his shoulders. He played for Chris Knobloch in Hartford. He kind of learned the ropes a little in the American Hockey League. So it's not like he stepped right out of Calgary into Madison Square Garden, fight capital of the world. But we're all watching to see that he comes through this without getting dinged.
Yeah, it was. I thought kind of that. When he had the hit and kind of crossed the line maybe a little bit, of the heavy play. That can be easy for a young player when every night they're looking at you to say, "What are you going to do next? What are you going to do next? How are you going to, take it up a notch from here?" So I like that. You do have to learn how to play within the line a little bit.
My favorite story, Darren, it was told to me by Wayne Gretzky, not to drop names, but it was a story of, Dave Brown, what a great fighter. Maybe you don't, but Dave Brown was an incredible fighter in the National Hockey League in the 80s. And he was a rookie in Philadelphia, and his stallmate was Bobby Clarke, the legendary Flin Flon bomber. They have a great team this year. Anyway, he says to Bobby Clarke, yeah, it's neat to see. He says to Bobby, hey, listen, I'd like to kind of make a name for myself. We're playing our arch rival here, the Boston Bruins. Who do you suggest I go with? And Bobby Clarke said, look, Dave, you're a big man, mountain of a man. But as I said, these guys are like trained assassins. They're men, and they would kill you as soon as look at you. You got to be careful out there. Here's the deal. If somebody challenges you, you don't back down. But don't, Dave, go looking for trouble. That is a recipe for disaster. Just play your game for now, and if something shows up, then you show up. And then Dave Brown walked away to go to the bathroom. He's standing at the urinal, and Bobby Clarke yells from the dressing room, of course, I never cared much for Milbury. So that was his marching orders, go get Mike Milbury, which was a funny story. But he learned from Clarkey, and you need those mentors, and there's plenty of people to show him the ropes. I would say Trouba would be a guy who's big and throws those Scott Stevens style hits, and will teach Rempe how to keep his arm in or how not to leave his feet, and tricks of the trade. It takes time.
For sure. We're seeing the mentorship in Chicago, Nick Foligno and Connor Bedard. That's been kind of fun to watch develop. But how about in Arizona last night with, the young Doan kid and his debut? And I'm not sure who's mentoring him in Arizona, but pretty cool opportunity last night for him.
Yeah, Josh's debut was just amazing. And Shane, obviously, you're never going to get a better mentor than Shane Doan. So he's connected to Katrina LeMay Doan, who I had the joy of covering in speed skating, and Bart Doan. There was lots of connections there to Shane, and so I got to know him very well, and his work around the league, not just as a player, but around the NHL. What a voice for hockey. So that's neat to see. And the Connor Bedard, Luke Richardson is the coach there, who I adore. Really special gentleman. So he's going to have somebody shelter him when he needs it, because they really, I was amazed at how he was everywhere at the start of this season. The NHL really did run with the marketing of Connor Bedard. But he proved maybe his, John Paddock prepared him for it. I'm not sure how he seemed so ready, but nothing seems to faze the kid. He's just, he reminds me of Austin Matthews when I first met him. They always bring in the top eligible draft picks to the playoffs, and whoever's going to be in the top 10 of the draft, they show up, and we usually get them on Hockey Night in Canada. And if I was to describe Matthews, it was like bemused. He wasn't at all impressed by all the celebrity of it. And Connor's got a little of that in him too. He just unfazed by ask me anything, I'm ready. And I mean, you might remember at the start of the year when they asked him about playing extra minutes, and he said, "Yeah, I like hockey. Doesn't bother me." So you need to have a wink to survive in this racket.
He does, and he's a player who wants to be out there in the big moment and
Yeah.
wants the puck on his stick, and not just letting the game come to him. He's going after it, which is really fun to watch.
I thought it was a really big moment in the World Junior Championship when Dennis Williams stuck with him and Stankoven, because that was the game that finally Shane Wright seemed to be going at a little higher level as they entered into, probably it was a Slovakia overtime, the semis or quarters, I can't remember.
Yeah.
But there was an example of the coach knowing, no, don't back off of Bedard. This is now, everything's on the line. Start with Bedard. And they did, and they won.
Yeah, incredibly cool. You mentioned the Mattamy, made me think about the University Cup and, Gardner McDougall and the job he did with the UNB Reds to win that, and what he's done, the Memorial Cup and potentially Canada at the U18s, but also the PWHL and the success that they've had. And the game feels like it's just at a different level right now across the country and the continent.
No, you're right. And for Toronto to have the NHL All-Star Weekend, they had at Scotiabank Arena, the PWHL filled the joint. And obviously at Mattamy, it was incredible to see that New Year's Day debut for, albeit Toronto didn't have their finest game that day, but Howie Draper, historic 26 years with the Pandas at University of Alberta. He's coaching New York, and there's just tons of players in that game. Natalie Spooner, she, as you see, she's on a tear right now, and couldn't be happier for her, because it was almost like it had passed her by. There was a new generation of women that they were going to use to shine a light on the new league, but she's just right there, as she always has been. She did Amazing Race. She did Battle of the Blades. She was unbelievable, Darren, on the Battle of the Blades program. Any of those brave enough to come and do that show.
It sounds like Rachel Holman's eager to get in, and you must have the same link.
Congratulate her. Unbelievable performance. So I can't wait to hear Rachel, and send her our pride. It's just amazing.
But before we let you go, I did want to ask you about just a little preview for the playoffs. You would know the last time it's been this exciting in Canada with 4 legit Stanley Cup contenders in the Leafs, the Jets, the Oilers, and the Canucks. I think the spring is going to be a lot of fun.
I do too. I mean, you never mind 1-8, 1-16 divisional brackets, as you say. The hockey couldn't be better right now. I do agree with you and Rod, or at least Rod, that maybe we should get to 20 teams into the playoffs. I think that would be great. And I do feel like, obviously, you're in California and Rod's in Florida, and all the talent on trade deadline went south. So you're representative of the good acquisitions at the trade deadline. But it'll be an amazing playoffs. And I feel like if I was to predict, I think hunger is going to be so important, and who's hungry, and that's David. So that would be, it's not a rocket science to pick the Oilers, but I feel like they're the ones to beat, even though they're kind of foggy right now.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. When they turn it on and decide they want to play, I don't know that anybody can skate with them. Ron, I appreciate this. Thanks for jumping in.
Thanks, Darren. And again, congrats to Rachel.
You bet. Ron MacLean joining us, Hockey Night in Canada.